bloodline of the revolution, high-ranking Workers' Party officials, military leaders, and families of those who died in service to the Kims. Their lives are centered in Pyongyang, a curated Potemkin capital of broad avenues, monolithic stadiums, and sporadic electricity. For them, the dictatorship provides access to exclusive food distribution centers with imported goods, apartments with functioning heat, cars, elite education for their children at schools like Mangyongdae Revolutionary School, and travel permits within the country. Their loyalty is rewarded with a material comfort utterly alien to the rest. They are the guardians of the system. The wavering or basic class. This is Jung's world. Encompassing 50 to 60% of North Koreans, this class consists of ordinary workers, farmers, low-level clerks and technicians whose families had neither standout revolutionary credentials nor marked disloyalty. Their songbun file is clean but unremarkable. They are the human engine of the nation, assigned to state factories, cooperative farms, or mines. They receive meager rations from the crumbling public distribution system, PDS, live in provincial cities with chronic power outages, and are perpetually one bad harvest or political incident away from hunger. Their existence is a negotiation between state mandate and illicit hustle. They are tolerated but never trusted. The hostile class. The bottom 10 to 20% are the politically condemned. This includes families of former landowners, Japanese collaborators, Christians, repatriates from Japan, those with relatives in South Korea, and anyone who has voiced dissent. They are banished to remote mountainous regions or bleak mining towns. They are denied higher education, barred from the military, a key path for social mobility, and receive the vilest work assignments and the smallest rations. For them, life is a daily struggle for physical survival under the constant threat of being swept into the Kwanliso, the political prison camp network where torture, starvation, and execution are routine. Their songbun is a life sentence. Jung's wavering status means he is assigned to a state textile factory in Chongjin, a gritty industrial port city with his wife and one child, allocated based on his factory rank. The apartment is cold in winter, stifling in summer, and running water is a sporadic luxury. His official monthly salary, paid in the nearly worthless North Korean won, might be equivalent to a few US dollars, enough to buy perhaps a single kilo of rice on the black market. Thus, his formal economy is a fiction. His real survival depends on the Jangmadang, the illicit yet now semi-tolerated private markets that have sprouted since the famine of the 1990s. His wife spends her days trading, bartering homemade goods, or selling foraged herbs. This gray economy is their lifeline, but it is also a source of constant anxiety, as it is technically a capitalist crime. 2. The panopticon, surveillance as social fabric. Jung's physical movements are less constrained than his psychological ones. The primary instrument of day-to-day control is the inminban, or people's unit. Typically comprising 20 to 30 neighboring households, each inminban is led by a middle-aged woman appointed by the local party committee. She is the eyes and ears of the state. Her duties include distributing rations and state propaganda, organizing mandatory self-criticism sessions, checking households for illegal radios or contraband, and reporting suspicious behavior, such as unauthorized travel, contact with foreigners, or failure to attend rallies. The Inminban creates a culture of mutual surveillance. Neighbors spy on neighbors, children are taught in school to report wrong thoughts expressed at home, and even family members learn to guard their words. Trust is the rarest commodity. Beyond the Inminban, the Ministry of State Security, Boibu, and the Ministry of People Security maintain vast networks of informants. Public spaces are dotted with party slogans and portraits of the Kims, positions the Kim dynasty as the source of all life, wisdom, and sustenance. The propaganda is omnipresent and repetitive. Every home must display the official portraits of Kim Il sung and Kim Jong il, kept in pristine condition. Every morning, Jung's day begins not with a news broadcast, but state radio programming blaring patriotic songs and regime hagiography from mandatory loudspeakers. His factory work is punctuated by self criticism sessions where workers must confess minor failings and pledge greater fervor. This relentless indoctrination aims to achieve what analyst B.R. Myers calls the theft of sincerity. The goal is not just forced obedience, but the genuine emotional identification of the citizen with the leader. Jung is taught that Kim Jong Un is a benevolent father who stays awake at night worrying about his people's food supply. Natural disasters are framed as arduous marches led by the marshal. This creates a profound cognitive dissonance. The daily reality of hardship clashes with the official narrative of a socialist paradise. For many, the mind splits into a public self that performs loyalty and a private self that harbors silent doubt, exhaustion, and a fragmented understanding of the outside world gleaned from whispered rumors or rare illegal foreign media. This psychological schism is the dictatorship's true masterpiece and its deepest vulnerability. We will walk with Jung through a single grinding day, from the pre-dawn loudspeaker call to the darkness of curfew, to see how this architecture of control materializes in the minute-by-minute struggle for bread, meaning, and a sliver of unseen dignity. To comprehend the texture of life under totalitarianism, one must move beyond systems and structures and step into the granular, exhausting rhythm of a single day. For Kim Young, a member of the wavering class in the industrial city of Chongjin, every 24-hour cycle is a meticulously choreographed ballet of state demands, scarce resources, and quiet, desperate improvisation. His day is not measured in hours of productivity or leisure, but in units of political compliance, calorie intake, and managed risk. This is a chronicle of Young's Wednesday, a day like any other, where the grand architecture of control detailed in Part 1 manifests in the mundane, draining reality of survival. 4:45 a.m., The Awakening, a symphony of state and scarcity. Young's sleep is thin, frayed by hunger pangs and the chill of an unheated apartment. His official wake-up call is not an alarm clock, but the crackling, tinny broadcast from the neighborhood loudspeaker mounted just outside his building. The state radio blares a military march, followed by the impassioned, saccharine voice of the newsreader proclaiming the latest glorious achievements of the respected Marshal Kim Jong Un. A new tractor factory opened, imperialist plots foiled, the boundless love of the leader for his people. This auditory assault is inescapable. It penetrates thin walls and cracks in the window frames, a constant reminder that the state owns even the first moments of consciousness. As Young rises, his first ritual is a non-negotiable act of devotion. He approaches the small, framed portraits of Kim Il sung and Kim Jong il mounted on the cleanest wall of the single room. He dusts the glass meticulously with a cloth, ensuring the sacred images are spotless. A negligence could be reported by the Inminban leader as a sign of ideological impurity. His wife, Mi Kyung, is already moving in the cramped space, using the pre-dawn dimness to light a small, dangerous coal briquette stove to boil water. Electricity, promised for 2 hours in the morning, is unreliable. They have a fixed electric bulb that barely glows when power arrives. Their real light comes from the weak flame of the stove. 5:30 a.m., The Ritual of Sustenance, Ration and Ruse. Breakfast is an exercise in arithmetic. The family's monthly public distribution system, PDS, ration, a few kilos of cornmeal, some shriveled potatoes, a small bag of salt, is nearly depleted, and it's only the 12th of the month.
Mi Kyung prepares a thin corn porridge, stretching it with wild greens she foraged the previous weekend. There is no milk, no sugar, no coffee. Protein is a memory from last month's rare holiday distribution of a tiny amount of dried fish. Jung eats quickly, his mind already on the day's main challenge, supplementing the ration. He knows his factory salary is meaningless. Survival depends on the Jangmadang market. Hidden in his coat is a small, valuable item, perhaps a pair of second-hand rubber work gloves pilfered from his factory, or a packet of Chinese cigarettes obtained through a risky border contact. This will be his barter currency later. As he eats, the family's non-portable radio, sealed to receive only state frequencies, continues its broadcast, now airing a lecture on the Juche idea. The children, a son aged 10, prepares for school, his uniform patched but clean. 6:15 a.m., the morning inspection, the Inminban's gaze. Before Jung can leave for work, there is a mandatory gathering. The Inminban leader, Mrs. Park, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a party badge pinned proudly to her chest, knocks on each door. The families of the unit gather in the cold hallway. This is the morning self-criticism session. Each head of household must briefly report. Jung's neighbor, Mr. Lim, mumbles about his dedication to increasing production at the steel plant. When it's Jung's turn, he recites a well-practiced formula. I pledge to exceed my fabric quota today, inspired by the heroic spirit of our soldiers defending the motherland. Mrs. Park nods, her eyes scanning the group for signs of reluctance or ill health. She announces a mandatory attendance at a rally that afternoon to celebrate a military anniversary. Absence, they all knew, would mean a deduction from their already meager rations and a black mark in their family's secret file. 7 a.m., the daily grind, the theater of productivity. Jung's commute is a somber walk through gray, crumbling streets, past massive propaganda murals depicting smiling workers and soldiers under the benevolent gaze of the Kims, a stark, ironic contrast to the worn faces and threadbare clothing of the actual people shuffling past. He arrives at the Chongjin Textile Factory No. 3, a cavernous, draughty building where the machinery is decades old and spare parts are scavenged or improvised. The work is monotonous, operating a deafening Soviet-era loom. But productivity is secondary. The primary purpose of the workplace is political mobilization. The factory floor has a party cell secretary, whose job is to monitor morale and ideological fervor. Mid-morning, the machines are shut down for a 30-minute study session. Workers gather to read aloud from the previous day's Rodong Sinmun editorial, discussing how to apply its lessons to their weaving. Jung mouths the words, his mind elsewhere, calculating the barter value of his hidden gloves, worrying about his son's cough, which they cannot afford medicine for. His physical labor is a performance. His mental energy is reserved for the intricate, illegal logistics of survival. 12:30 p.m., the midday interlude, the Black Market Ballet. The lunch break is the pivot of Jung's day. Instead of eating the cold corn cake his wife packed, he rushes to a bustling, semi-clandestine Jangmadang on the factory's periphery. This is where the real economy thrives. Vendors, mostly women, sell everything from Chinese-made socks and used batteries to smuggled rice and sugar, all at prices denominated in US dollars, Chinese yuan, or even grams of gold dust. The North Korean won is laughed at. Jung finds a trader, a tough-looking woman with a calculating gaze. He produces the rubber gloves. After brief, tense haggling conducted in hushed tones and with constant glances over the shoulder for police, he secures 2 small bags of white rice and a handful of painkillers, a treasure. The rice will provide real calories for his family for a few days. The pills might ease his son's fever. The transaction is illegal on multiple counts: trading state property, engaging in private commerce, using foreign currency. But everyone does it. The Jangmadang is the regime's dirty secret, a pressure valve it dares not fully shut. for it is the only thing preventing mass starvation and rebellion. Jung hurries back, his heart pounding with the adrenaline of the illicit yet essential act. 1:30 p.m. to 5 p.m., the afternoon. Performance and parade. The afternoon shift is a blur of noise and fatigue. At 4 p.m., the looms are stopped again. The workers are herded into the factory yard. It is time for the mandatory rally. They are given small North Korean flags and pre-printed placards with slogans like "Long live the Marshal" and "Death to American imperialists." For an hour, they stand in neat rows, listening to a party official deliver a fiery speech about military triumphs. They are required to shout in unison at specific cues, their faces contorted into expressions of fervor. Jung raises his fist, his voice joining the chorus, while his empty stomach growls and his mind replays the successful rice trade. The spectacle is for no foreign audience, it is for the participants themselves, a daily rehearsal of their own subjugation, meant to blur the line between actor and believer. 6 p.m. Dusk. The return to the private sphere, such as it is. Jung walks home, exhausted not just from work, but from the performance. At home, a small victory. Myung has managed to trade a hand-knitted hat for a piece of tofu and some garlic. The precious rice is cooked. For the first time that day, the family eats a warm, semi-filling meal. The atmosphere is tense but tender. They speak in low voices, careful not to be overheard through the thin walls. They do not discuss politics, the rally, or their doubts. They talk of practical things, the son's school assignment, a rumor of a new checkpoint on the road to the next town, the hope of finding cheap coal before winter deepens. This is the extent of their private life, a fragile space of shared scarcity and unspoken understanding, carved out between the state's intrusions. 9 p.m. Curfew and contraband dreams. As official curfew approaches, the loudspeakers fall silent. The city is plunged into a profound darkness, broken only by occasional flickers from generators in elite compounds. In the blackout, Jung's family might engage in their most dangerous ritual. From a hidden compartment in the floor, Jung retrieves a small, battery-powered Chinese radio, meticulously modified to receive foreign frequencies. With the volume turned barely above a whisper, pressed against their ears, they listen to the Korean language broadcast from South Korea's KBS or the US-funded Radio Free Asia. The signal is weak, often drowned in static, but the words are explosive. Reports of South Korea's prosperity, international news about sanctions, even critiques of the North Korean regime. This is a crime punishable by years in a labor camp. But for 15 minutes, Jung escapes. He hears a world where food is plentiful, where people criticize their leaders openly, where his skills might earn a real living. It is a glimpse of an alternate universe that fills him with a corrosive mix of yearning, disbelief, and profound sadness. The radio is hidden away. Jung lies on his thin mat, the day's ideological noise replaced by a silent, private turmoil. He has navigated the dictatorship's maze for another day. He has performed, hustled, and survived. But as he drifts into a hungry sleep, the whispering voice from the forbidden radio lingers, a tiny, dangerous crack in the monolithic wall of his controlled reality. Beyond the theatrical displays of loyalty and the grinding state-assigned work lies the true, pulsating heart of North Korean society, its shadow economy. For Kim Jong and the vast majority of citizens, the official, state-run socialist economy is a hollow shell, a source of meager rations and worthless currency, but not of life. To actually live, to secure food, medicine, clothing, and any semblance of comfort, one must become an adept player in a complex, dangerous, and universally understood system of illicit transactions, bribery, and black market entrepreneurship. This is the economy of whispers, of hidden compartments, and of calculated risk. It is the unspoken engine that prevents societal collapse and, paradoxically, sustains the very regime that officially condemns it. Part 3 delves into this invisible network that defines Jung's struggle for dignity. The official lie, the collapsed public distribution system, PDS. In the ideal Juche world, the state provides for all. The public distribution system, PDS, established in the 1950s, was meant to be the sole channel for food, clothing, and household goods. For Jung's parents' generation, it functioned, however poorly. Today, it is a relic. The system catastrophically failed during the arduous March famine of the 1990s, which killed hundreds of thousands. It never recovered. In 2025, for someone of Jung's wavering class in the provinces, the PDS delivers erratic subsistence rations, perhaps 5 to 7 kilograms of corn or low-grade rice per month, occasional salt, oil, and tojang, soybean paste. The ration is often delayed by months, reduced without explanation, or replaced with inedible substitutes. It is a calorie count designed for bare survival, not labor. The state's salary paid to Jung at the textile factory is an even crueler joke. His monthly pay in North Korean won might be 5,000 KPW. The black market exchange rate is roughly 8,000 KPW to $1. His entire monthly salary is worth less than 75 cents. It cannot buy a single kilogram of rice on the Jangmadong. Thus, the official economy is not just inefficient, it is the theater of absurdity, a mandatory performance everyone must pretend to participate in while seeking real sustenance elsewhere. The lifeline, the Jangmadong Revolution. The vacuum left by the PDS was filled by the Jangmadong. What began as desperate flea market-style bartering during the famine has evolved into a nationwide, sophisticated, and semi-institutionalized gray market economy. These are not hidden back-alley dealings. They are often vast, open-air markets on the outskirts of cities, buzzing with thousands of people. Here, the currency is hard cash, US dollars, Chinese yuan, and euros. The North Korean won is used only for small change. Jung's wife, Mi Kyung, is a Jangmadong veteran. Her typical day involves sourcing goods. She might buy smuggled Chinese fabric with a contact with border guards, sew it into simple clothes at home, and sell them at a markup. Or she might trade foraged pine mushrooms, a local delicacy prized in China, for bags of rice or bottles of cooking oil. The goods available are a testament to the regime's loss of control. South Korean cosmetics, Chinese smartphones, American medication, Japanese used clothing, pirated DVDs of Hollywood and K-dramas. The Jangmadong is more than a market. It is a window to the outside world, a space where information is exchanged as freely as goods, and where the regime's propaganda of imperialist starvation is visibly contradicted by the abundance of foreign products. The cost of doing business, bribes as a systemic tax. To operate in this illegal yet essential space, one must pay a pervasive, unofficial tax, bribes. Corruption is not an anomaly, it is the lubrication of the entire system. From the moment Jung or Mi Kyung approaches the market, they encounter a chain of officials expecting payment. The local police, the Powanzo, they patrol the market's periphery. A regular small bribe, a pack of cigarettes, a few dollars, ensures they look the other way. The market manager, often a connected local party member, they collect stall fees that line their own pockets. The state security or Bowibu informants, lurking in the crowd, can be temporarily pacified with a larger bribe or a valuable gift, like a bottle of foreign liquor, to avoid being reported for anti-socialist behavior. The factory manager, even at his state job, Jung must bribe his supervisor to overlook his lateness, his low productivity, or his occasional theft of factory materials, like thread or spare parts, that can be used for home production or barter. This bribe economy creates a brutal paradox. The very act of surviving, of acquiring food for his family, requires routinely breaking the law and financially enriching the low-level enforcers of the regime. It breeds universal cynicism and a deep understanding that the state is not a provider, but a predator to be negotiated with. The high-stakes trade, smuggling, and the border economy. The goods in the Jiangmadong have to come from somewhere. This leads to the riskiest tier of the shadow economy, cross-border smuggling. Northern provinces like North Hamgyong, where Chongqing is located, border China. A complex ecosystem has evolved. Smugglers, often with ties to the military or security services, bring in Chinese consumer goods, food, and electronics. In return, they take out North Korean resources, coal, iron ore, seafood, and even methamphetamine produced in state-controlled labs. For desperate individuals, smuggling oneself or acting as a courier can be a ticket to relative wealth or a death sentence. Jung knows a man from his Inminbon who disappeared after being caught trying to sell a USB drive containing South Korean dramas. He was likely sent to a Kyowaso, re-education through labor camp, for spiritual pollution. The border is a sieve controlled not by the state's laws, but by the avarice of its own guards, who take a cut of every transaction. The psychological toll, living a double life. This constant engagement in illegality shapes Jung's psyche. He lives in a state of perpetual low-grade anxiety. Every transaction carries risk. A vendor might be an undercover agent, a dissatisfied customer could report him, a routine police sweep could net him for possessing foreign currency. He must maintain a flawless public facade, the dutiful worker, the fervent rally attendee, while being a cunning, rule-breaking survivor in private. This cognitive dissonance is exhausting. It fragments the self. The official ideology preaches selfless sacrifice for the collective. The shadow economy teaches ruthless, self-interested hustle. To navigate this, Jung has developed what analyst Andrei Lenkov calls a dual consciousness. He can recite Juche maxims with apparent sincerity while simultaneously calculating the dollar-to-rice exchange rate in his head. The regime tolerates this because it has no choice. The shadow economy prevents mass revolt, but it also fundamentally undermines the regime's ideological claim to total allegiance, creating a population of pragmatic hypocrites who have learned to thrive in the gaps of the dictatorship's control, their survival a quiet daily act of defiance. In this invisible economy, Jung finds both his oppression and his agency. He is exploited at every turn, yet his small acts of illicit trade are the only things that grant him a measure of control over his family's fate. It is a humiliating, dangerous freedom, but it is the only freedom he has. We will explore the weaponization of information and the regime's most sacred project, the control of the human mind itself. If the shadow economy is the bloodstream of North Korean survival, then the control of information is the regime's central nervous system. For Jung, the physical hardships of scarcity are matched by a profound psychological siege, a relentless, multi-generational campaign to dominate consciousness itself. The dictatorship understands that to maintain power, it must not only command actions, but also own memories, shape perceptions, and dictate the very boundaries of imagination. This is not mere propaganda, it is a totalizing reality management project, an attempt to construct a hermetic mental universe where the Kim dynasty is the sun, the state is the natural world, and all external truths are heresy. Part 4 explores the architecture of this mind fortress and the cracks through which glimmers of the real world occasionally seep. The sonic environment, the unending symphony of the state. Jung's auditory landscape is a carefully curated instrument of control. His day begins and ends with the loudspeaker system blaring state news and anthems. At work, factory radios are tuned to the same. The content follows a rigid formula: hymns to the leader's genius, reports of economic miracles, always attributed to his guidance, and venomous diatribes against external enemies: the imperialist United States, the puppet South Korean regime, and the gangster international community imposing sanctions. The language is hyperbolic, emotive, and repetitive. The goal is saturation and fatigue. By drowning out all other signals, the state aims to make its narrative the default setting of the mind, so ingrained that questioning it would feel like questioning the laws of physics, the visual world, iconography as a sacred geography. Visually, Jung cannot escape the trinity of Kims. Their portraits hang in every home, office, and public building, mandated by law. Massive bronze statues and mosaic murals dominate city squares. Even the landscape is inscribed with ideology. Mountains bear giant white-painted slogans like "Long live General Kim Jung Un." These are not decorations, they are objects of mandated veneration. School children are taught to bow before the portraits. Dust on the frame can be punishable. This iconography creates a sacred geography, transforming the entire country into a temple dedicated to a living god king. It visually reinforces the message that the Kims are the source of all life, protection, and meaning, making dissent not just political treason, but a form of blasphemy. The education system, manufacturing devotion from birth. Jung's son attends a local primary school, which is less a center of learning than a factory for ideological conformity. The curriculum is dominated by Kim Il-sungism, Kim Jong-ilism. Math problems are framed as calculating artillery shells needed to destroy American ships. History is a mythological saga of the Kim family's anti-Japanese guerrilla exploits and their divine wisdom in building the nation. Science lessons emphasize Juche-based self-reliance in technology. The most important subject is the childhood of the great leaders, where pupils memorize fable-like stories of Kim Jong-il's supernatural brilliance as a toddler. Children are recruited into the Korean Children's Union and later the Socialist Youth League, where they learn collective rituals of loyalty. The system is designed to forge an emotional bond before critical thinking can develop. Teachers are political officers first, educators second. Reporting on one's parents for incorrect speech at home is encouraged as a patriotic duty, turning the family unit into a potential cell of surveillance. The sealed information environment, walls against the world. The regime's most critical technical achievement is its information blockade. All media is state-owned. Radios and TVs are fixed to receive only government channels. Possession of an unmodified radio is a serious crime. The national intranet, Pyongyang, is a walled garden of state-approved content, disconnected from the global internet, which is accessible only to a tiny elite for approved purposes. The goal is to create a hermetically sealed epistemic bubble. In this bubble, South Korea is portrayed as a hellish colony of American beggars. The outside world is a hostile place full of people who envy and hate North Korea's purity, and the nation's poverty is the result of a heroic struggle against imperialist siege, not policy failure. For Jung, who grew up in this bubble, these were long unquestioned facts: the cracks in the wall, information contraband, and wind of China. Despite the seal, the bubble is leaking. The single greatest threat to the mind fortress is the smuggled USB drive. Alongside Chinese goods, black market traders bring in thumb drives and SD cards packed with contraband media, South Korean TV dramas, Hollywood movies, Chinese news broadcasts, and even documentaries about North Korea itself. This is referred to as eating the wind of China or watching tainted videos. For Jung, watching a South Korean drama like Crash Landing on You, ironically about North Korea, is an earth-shattering experience. He sees people who speak his language living in dazzling, clean apartments, using smartphones freely, debating with police, and enjoying abundance. The cognitive dissonance is violent. The regime warns that these videos are poisonous, fabricated, and psychological warfare. But the images are too potent. They plant a seed of corrosive doubt. Radio Free Asia and KBS Korean broadcasts, captured on illegal radios, offer news of the outside world, offering alternative explanations for his hardship, sanctions, misallocation, corruption, that make more sense than the official narrative of a beloved leader battling unseen forces. The psychology of belief and doubt, navigating two realities. This influx of illegal information forces Jung to develop a schizophrenic relationship with truth. He lives in two parallel realities. In the public reality, he performs absolute belief. He attends the rallies, shouts the slogans, and professes love for the marshal. This performance is essential for physical safety. In his private reality, nurtured by smuggled media and hushed conversations with trusted friends, he harbors deep skepticism, resentment, and a yearning for the world he sees on screen. This is not full-blown dissent. It is a confused, anxious space of knowing but not believing, doubting but not rejecting. He may believe the South is prosperous, but also accept the propaganda that it is morally bankrupt. He may doubt the leader's omnipotence, but still fear his power. The regime's control is no longer about securing genuine belief from the wavering class like Jung. It is about enforcing public compliance and managing the spread of doubt to prevent it from coalescing into collective action. The ultimate fear, the erosion of the sacred. When a smuggled video shows a South Korean comedian joking about Kim Jung Un, it does something profound. It desacralizes the leader. It transforms him from an untouchable divine figure into a potential object of mockery. This is an attack on the very core of the system. The state responds with draconian crackdowns, anti-reactionary thought campaigns, sudden inspections, and exemplary executions of those caught with large caches of media. But the genie is out of the bottle. For Jung, the mind fortress is no longer impregnable. It is a prison he has learned to mentally map, its walls now visible because he has glimpsed what lies beyond them. His consciousness has become a battleground, and while the state still occupies most of the territory, it is fighting a guerrilla war against the infiltrating seeds of a different reality, a reality where his life, his suffering, and his potential might have a different meaning entirely. We will examine the social contract in this system, the mechanisms of fear, punishment, and the grim lottery of fate that decides who thrives, who suffers, and who disappears. Beneath the surface of daily routines, shadow economies, and ideological saturation lies the bedrock of the North Korean dictatorship, a finely tuned machinery of fear. For Kim Jung, this is not an abstract concept, but a pervasive atmospheric pressure, a constant calculation of risk that governs every non-mandated action and every unguarded word. The regime maintains control not only through the promise of a utopian Juche future, but through the meticulously demonstrated certainty of brutal punishment for deviation. This system of rewards and horrors creates a stark, terrifying lottery where one's fate, comfort, suffering, or annihilation can hinge on lineage, chance, or the whim of a minor official. Part 5 exposes the gears of this machinery, the penal system, the calculus of privilege, and the psychological landscape of perpetual terror that defines Jung's existence. The spectrum of punishment, from humiliation to annihilation. Transgressions in North Korea are not just legal failures, they are ideological sins against the revolution. Punishment is scaled to match the perceived threat to the system, and its arbitrariness is a key feature of its terror. Public shaming and struggle sessions. For minor infractions, chronic lateness at the factory, a poorly maintained Kim portrait, a failure to donate enough to a state fund, Jung might face a self-criticism struggle session at his workplace or in Inminban. He would be forced to stand before his peers, confess his anti-collective thoughts, and endure verbal abuse. His rations could be cut. This public humiliation reinforces group surveillance and instills the cost of nonconformity in a deeply communal culture. Administrative penalties, the Kyo Hwaso, re-education camps. For more serious crimes like repeated illegal market activity, crossing a county line without permission, or being caught with a single smuggled DVD, Jung could be sent to a Kyo Hwaso. These are not the infamous political prison camps, but long-term detention centers for ideological re-education. Sentences range from 6 months to a decade. Conditions are brutal: forced hard labor in mines or logging, starvation rations, and relentless indoctrination. Torture is common. The goal is to break the individual spirit and return them to society as a compliant zombie. Survival is not guaranteed, but release is possible if the prisoner demonstrates sincere repentance. The ultimate horror, the Kwanliso, the political prison camp system, for irredeemable enemies of the state. Inmates include those accused of plotting against the leadership, having contact with South Koreans, practicing Christianity, or being part of a hostile family, punished under the principle of guilt by association, Jungjae, across 3 generations. Jung knows the rumors. These are zones of absolute negation. Inmates are worked to death in mines or quarries, subjected to medical experiments, summarily executed, or left to starve. Escape is nearly impossible. The camps, like Camp 14, Kaichan, or Camp 25, Chongjin, are erased from maps. Their existence is the regime's ultimate argument. Step out of line, and you and your bloodline will be erased from the earth. This knowledge hangs over Jung like a cold shadow, making even the thought of overt dissent a psychological impossibility. The calculus of privilege: who gets to eat and why. Fear's counterpart is the selective transactional dispensation of privilege. The regime skillfully uses scarce resources to buy loyalty and create a vested interest in the status quo. The Pyongyang elite, for the core class in the capital, privilege is systemic. They live in districts like Central or Potonggang, with reliable electricity and heat. They shop at diplomatic stores or special distribution centers stocked with imported food, wine, and electronics. Their children attend Kim Il-sung University or study abroad. They have access to limited, state-monitored internet and foreign travel. Their loyalty is reinforced by a comfortable life that is visibly, starkly better than the rest of the nation's. The provincial rich. Even in Chongjin, a hierarchy exists. The factory director, local party secretary, or military security chief lives in a better apartment, may own a Chinese-made car, and has first pick of black market goods. Their privilege comes from their position in the control apparatus. They are the local enforcers, and their loyalty is purchased with a larger share of the spoils. The currency of connections, blowfish and bribes. For someone like Jung, small privileges are not granted, but purchased or negotiated. A doctor will only provide proper medicine after receiving a bribe, cash, cigarettes, or alcohol. A teacher might give a child more attention if the family provides gifts. This turns every human interaction into a potential transaction. The Korean term engtori, blowfish, meaning an influential connection, is crucial. Having a relative or friend in a position of minor authority can mean the difference between a pass or a penalty during a routine inspection. Jung's entire social strategy involves cultivating and maintaining these fragile, expensive connections. The lottery of fate, when chance is the only law. Beyond the systems of punishment and privilege lies the terrifying role of pure chance. In a system where laws are vague and arbitrarily enforced, fate is capricious. A random spot check by the Boweeboo on the wrong day could find the hidden Chinese radio Jung's family sometimes uses, leading to disaster. A personal grudge from a neighbor or coworker could result in a false report to the Inminban leader, triggering an investigation. A shift in political winds, a new crackdown ordered from Pyongyang, could turn previously tolerated market activities into arrestable offenses overnight. Simply being in the wrong family, a distant cousin who fled to South Korea decades ago, is a permanent, unchangeable risk factor that could be activated at any time. This arbitrariness is psychologically paralyzing. It teaches that safety lies not in perfect obedience, which is impossible given the contradictory demands to both obey state work rules and break them to survive, but in invisibility and luck. Jung learns to keep his head down, to trust no one completely, and to view every piece of good fortune, a successful trade, a missed inspection, as a temporary reprieve, not a permanent condition. The psychology of the cage, internalized terror. The ultimate success of the machinery of fear is not the crowded prison camp, but the prison each citizen builds in their own mind. Jung has internalized the censor. He doesn't need a guard to stop him from speaking freely. He stops himself. He automatically filters his thoughts, his jokes, his hopes, and even his dreams through a mental checkpoint. Is this safe? Could this be misconstrued? This self-censorship is more efficient than any police force. It breeds a profound social atomization. Deep, trusting bonds are dangerous. Even within families, conversations are guarded. The collective paranoia fractures society into millions of isolated, fearful individuals, perfectly manageable by the state. Jung's greatest tragedy may not be his material poverty, but this poverty of the spirit, the constant draining effort to police his own humanity to fit within the narrow, cold confines of a system designed to keep him afraid, alone, and perpetually off balance. In the final part, we will look beyond Jung's daily struggle to the forces, both internal and external, that are slowly, imperceptibly changing the calculus of this dictatorship, and what the future may hold for the people living in its shadow. The image of North Korea as a frozen, unchanging Stalinist relic is a powerful one, but it is incomplete. While the core machinery of totalitarian control remains brutally intact, the society within which Kim Jong navigates his perilous existence is undergoing slow, profound, and potentially tectonic shifts. These changes are not televised revolutions or public protests. They are subtle, grassroots transformations born of survival instincts, smuggled technology, and generational change. They represent the regime's new, more complex battle, not just to control bodies, but to contain a gradual erosion of its ideological and economic monopoly. The final chapter of Jung's story examines these emerging fissures in the monolith, the nascent forms of quiet resistance, and the daunting possibilities that lie ahead for the North Korean people. The unstoppable infiltrator, marketization, and the socialist capitalist. The most significant change since the famine of the 1990s is the irreversible marketization of daily life. As detailed earlier, the Jangmadong is not just a lifeline, it is an alternative power center. This has created a new, unofficial social class, the danju, or masters of money. These are entrepreneurs who have amassed relative wealth through smuggling, trade, and corruption. They build hidden, luxurious houses, bribe officials to ignore their activities, and even lend money to cash-strapped state enterprises. Critically, they often secure their position by buying their children into the elite. Through massive bribes, they can get their offspring into Pyongyang universities or secure positions in the foreign trade apparatus. This creates a merger of economic power and political protection, corrupting the party's ideological purity from within. For Jung, the danju are both a source of goods and a symbol of a new, cynical reality. Loyalty to the Kims is no longer the only path to security. Money, if you can amass enough of it, can buy a form of protection that ideology cannot provide. This erodes the legitimacy of the songbun system, creating a parallel hierarchy based on wealth. The generation gap, the Jangmadong generation versus the revolutionary generation. Jung, in his 40s, straddles two worlds. His parents were the revolutionary generation, who through indoctrination or genuine belief, internalized the Juche ideology and a deep fear of the outside world. His son, however, is part of the Jangmadong generation, or black market generation. Born after the famine, they have known nothing but a failed state system and a thriving illegal market. Their formative experiences are not collective farm rallies, but hustling for Chinese goods. They are digitally curious, having seen smuggled smartphones and USB drives filled with South Korean media. They are more likely to question the regime's propaganda because they have visceral black and white evidence of its lies in the form of South Korean dramas showcasing modern apartments, abundant food, and free expression. This generation is less afraid and more disillusioned. Their loyalty is not to the party, but to their family's survival, and their aspirations, however repressed, are shaped by glimpses of a vastly different life. The regime fears this generation, attempting to co-opt them with state-sponsored pop music groups like Moranbong Band, while cracking down harder on their media consumption. The information epidemic, technology as a subversive agent. While the state maintains its digital blockade, technology is its Achilles heel. Smuggled Chinese smartphones, USBs, and miniature radios are vectors for information epidemic. Networks for sharing files, dubbed GoNet or MegaNet, operate device-to-device via Bluetooth or illegal local Wi-Fi networks in markets. South Korean slang and fashion trends seep in through these channels. This creates a knowingness among the populace, especially the young. They may still publicly perform loyalty, but privately they share memes, music, and information that mocks or bypasses state narratives. The regime's response, harsh penalties, jamming signals, is a desperate rearguard action against a tide it cannot stop. For Jung, this means his son knows more about the outside world than he ever did at that age, creating a silent, unbridgeable gap in their shared reality. Forms of quiet resistance, from weapons of the weak to moral withdrawal. Open defiance is suicide. Therefore, resistance takes passive, subtle forms that sociologist James C. Scott calls weapons of the weak. Economic non-compliance. The entire shadow economy is a massive act of daily resistance. Every time Jung barters instead of relying on the PDS, he is voting with his actions against the state's economic model. Ideological cynicism and apathy. The performance of loyalty has become just that, a performance. The fervor is gone, replaced by a hollow ritual. This inner emigration, a withdrawal of genuine belief, is a profound defeat for a regime that demands emotional fealty. Humor and gossip. Subversive jokes and rumors about the leadership circulate in whispers. They are a pressure valve and a way to reclaim a small measure of psychological space from the state's grim narrative. Religious faith. Despite horrific persecution, underground Christian house churches and clandestine Buddhist practices persist. They offer an alternative moral framework and a community of trust outside the state's control, representing a direct challenge to the Kim's spiritual supremacy. The regime's adaptation, dynastic survival above all. The regime is not blind to these changes. Its primary goal, however, is not reform, but dynastic survival. It adapts tactically to absorb shocks without ceding core control. It tolerates the markets because it needs them to prevent famine. It allows a whisper of foreign culture to let off steam, while periodically making brutal examples of those who go too far. It promotes a narrative of our-style socialism that awkwardly accommodates some market mechanisms while denying any ideological shift. The development of nuclear weapons serves as the ultimate guarantor of this survival, creating a deterrent against external regime change and a source of nationalist pride to bolster domestic legitimacy. Possible futures: collapse, transformation, or perpetual strain. Jung's future and that of 25 million North Koreans hangs in a perilous balance between several scenarios. Sudden collapse, a leadership crisis, economic shock, or mass uprising triggered by a famine could cause rapid disintegration, leading to chaotic absorption by the South, a humanitarian catastrophe, and regional instability. Managed transformation. A reform-minded faction within the elite, perhaps backed by the Donju, could gradually open the economy while maintaining political control, following a Vietnamese or Chinese model. This could improve living standards for people like Jung, but leave the authoritarian structure intact. Perpetual strain, the most likely near-term future. The current status quo of muddling through continues. The regime maintains its nuclear shield and police state, while the population relies on the black market and smuggled information to survive and slowly, quietly change from within. This is a future of continued hardship for Jung, but also one where the regime's total control continues to erode, grain by grain, USB drive by USB drive. Conclusion: Jung's dignity in the shadow. Kim Jong's daily life is a masterpiece of human resilience. He navigates a world designed to break his spirit, yet he finds ways to love his family, to trade for an extra bag of rice, to share a forbidden film with a trusted friend. His story is not one of heroic rebellion, but of dignity preserved in the interstices of oppression. He represents the millions who, by the simple, stubborn acts of surviving and seeking slight betterment, are slowly altering the fabric of their society. The North Korean dictatorship remains one of the most repressive and cruel systems on Earth, a monument to the human capacity for constructing hells for others. But within its walls, the human capacity for adaptation, for seeking truth, and for clinging to hope, however faint and dangerous, proves equally enduring. The final outcome of this silent struggle between a rigid state and a changing people remains the greatest unanswered question on the Korean peninsula, and for individuals like Jung, the only thing certain is that the struggle itself will define every tomorrow.